This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by chasingartwork.com, where you can buy the brand new Dragon Nanny graphic novel, as well as limited edition foils. They're only going to be up there for a short amount of time, so this is your last chance in 2020 to pick up a copy.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how a genre gets made. My arms are a little sore because of the news that I have for you today. Dan, our producer, is here with us, as well as the other suitably exhausted Justin Curry, also known as Chasing Artwork. Justin, what did we just do?
You might be exhausted. I'm just warmed up there.
I'm ready for my afternoon tea right now. That's what I'm ready for.
We just unloaded, 148 boxes of books? Something like that?
That's right. 2,082 copies of Dragon Nanny. Just came off the trucks. 84. Oh, I was so close to my precision. You could have just left me with that, eh?
No, couldn't let you have that. No, sorry, we were both wrong. It was 149 boxes, 2,086 books, 4,166 pounds. Now,
I don't mind being wrong because you were also wrong.
Yeah.
So it feels okay. It feels okay. We had a few misadventures this morning, but one of the things, Dan, that I think we're going to do this episode is prompted by some feedback I got from the last couple of episodes, which was more than one person sent a text or message through my Instagram or Twitter saying that they want more specific minutia related to how a book became the Kickstarter, became fulfillment, became that. And we were trying to think of a way to lay that out that wasn't like a technical document for people to listen to. And I think that what we're going to do is we're going to try a thought experiment where we go, it's not really an experiment because we have the evidence already, but we're going to go backwards through time. If Justin is willing to play this game, where we're going to start with the boxes of books which are currently stacked in the studio, and we're going to go backwards a step at a time until it's just an idea.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Do you want to start off, though? Do you want to tell the fun story that kind of started off our day?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, we can do this in game. Yeah. So like you have a box of books now with you at home, Justin. What had to happen before that could occur? You had to drop me off at home. Then we go backwards to angry guy on the stairs. And that angry guy that we passed on the stairs shouldn't have anything to do with us, Dan. But he did. But the only way to know how is to go further backwards in time to the truck showing up a few hours too early.
The call I had yesterday with the printers, which it's a very big printing company. They have lots of different departments, and usually communication between departments is pretty good, but it seems like whoever we talk to at the book printing place, who talks to the person on the truck that's bringing the books, there's always some kind of, I don't know, something doesn't get passed on, or we're a little left out of the loop. So the last, I think, 3 or 4 books that we've had dropped off came at drastically different times than what was discussed, which isn't usually too big of a problem because we both live fairly close to the studio where the books are getting dropped off. So we can kind of drop things and rush over to meet the printer, but it never happens when it's supposed to happen.
Like any big logistical, undertaking, big or small, no plan survives contact with the enemy here. So, whatever they told us would work, and then what happened with the boots on the ground, there was a definite misalignment. But that's pretty standard when it comes to this.
Yeah, it's to be expected. It's not a big deal.
So if there's a lesson to take away, you could almost say, if you're waiting on your books, they won't come when you planned exactly. So leave your day open.
Yes.
measurable
Yeah.
piece of advice. And
When
then
there's
if you have
pallets of anything, don't trust the shipping
yeah,
window. Just be ready the entire day.
yeah. And then also make sure that the loading bay doesn't have anyone else's cars in it.
So when I arrived at the studio this morning, a couple hours before I was expecting to be there to meet the books, the truck with 3 pallets of 4,000, what was it, 14, how many pounds of books did we move? What did I
Too
say?
many.
The 4,000 pounds of books couldn't make it into the loading dock because a gentleman had decided that that was his parking spot for the day, not for the morning, not for the 15 minutes allotted that you're supposed to spend in there, but he just kind of left his car in there for the day. So we arrived at shortly after 9, and the car had already been there for about half an hour, according to the building manager. And around lunch, we ran into a gentleman in the lobby who was quite upset that he had come back to find his car towed.
And we felt pretty bad about it. I went into every business that made sense that it could belong to that guy, or that car could belong to. And I poked my head in and I said, hey, we're in the loading bay. We need to get in there. We don't want to have to tow a car. It's already been a half an hour and we've been waiting. We've been patient as possible. The building manager sent an email to everyone who rents from the building, so that it would, we just did everything we could to not be those guys that had to tow a car away.
But we had to ruin somebody's day to make our day go smoothly.
Oh my God. So I feel guilty because we also sometimes park too long in that loading bay. So if you're listening, whoever that is, we're sorry. But we saw you sitting on the stairs, and you're much larger than both of us, and you were very angry. So it didn't seem like the time to apologize to you face to face.
When I walked by him a second time, and he was on the phone with a friend or somebody, and he was claiming that he'd only been there like not even 15 minutes, and they towed his car. So I did catch him in a fib on a phone call, so I feel a little less bad.
Well, why didn't he receive the all the attempts you guys tried to, all the time you guys tried to like find the person? Why couldn't you find him? Was he not a member of those businesses, or?
They sent out like a mass email to everybody, so he probably just wasn't checking his email. Like the building sends out like everybody's on the email list, and they'll send out like today we're having a fire drill. Somebody's parked here and they're not supposed to, stuff like that. So I guess he just
pretty forgiving. Yeah, it's pretty forgiving, and we're usually very patient. And if there's something like that, we'll usually just tell the delivery. It's happened before where we just tell the delivery people, like, you're going to have to come back in a while, right? But in this particular instance, there just was no way to do that. And when you have pallets of stuff that you have to unload, so we had no choice. So all of the good fortune related to our day is somewhat overcast by some other upset fellow. He also had all these boxes of handmade goods with him, I saw. So I felt doubly bad because he's clearly a maker or works for one. So, but let that be a lesson to you. There's no free parking downtown, especially not in loading bays.
Like a glove.
Before books can arrive at a loading bay somewhere, what are some of the steps that you have to go through?
You have to print it.
Okay, so if you have to print it, they give you a print date. How do you figure out what that print date should be? We planned our print date related to our fulfillment plan.
Yes. Well, like one kind of influences the other, right? Like most print dates aren't set until the project is about 25% done, I would say. When a book is about 25 to 30% done, you can then kind of gauge how quickly you're going to work and kind of imagine how long the rest of it will take. And so from there, you can kind of set your rough deadline that kind of gets tightened up as it gets closer to the date, because printers can move things around a little bit, but the less they move around, the better. So when do you think we talked to Friesens? We printed in October, but we were probably locking in print dates like April, May, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had got quotes before you can get your print date. You want to quote
Yeah.
with people. So we had
Yeah.
gotten quotes months in advance of that and reviewed the cost per unit share. And considerations there were basically paper stock versus dimensions versus cover stock versus the weight of the project related to what it costs to ship. So these were all things that we looked at on those quotes.
Which is all like it's very, very overwhelming when you have no frame of reference for all that. I think that's a much easier thing to figure out now since I've printed 10, 11 books. I know what kind of, like, I know all that jargon now. Whereas when I first got that quote, I had no idea what 80-pound text weight semi-gloss satin fit, like I didn't know what any of that meant. So I didn't know if that's what I wanted or what. So it took a while to kind of figure that all out.
I think another important thing to point out there is that I didn't know when I started, because I was joking about that on the number of times I've unloaded a pallet while we were doing this one, going all the way back to 2008, that I didn't know that it was okay to ask clarification on those things, that you're not expected to know. That when they send you that quote, any single phrase, term, anything, your print rep will decode for you. And they'll take a half hour for each thing if that's what you want to do, right? To go through it. So you don't have to be intimidated by how ignorant you feel by all the bylines on that quote. You can just go through it a step at a time and they'll tell you every single thing if you need to. That's a print rep's job. And, ours, Donovan, has been so great with all of that.
Sample books as well. Almost any printing press of any kind will have a bunch of samples on hand. So if you want to know, like, I don't understand these differences in like the cover, they'll send you a book with all these materials. These are like the different materials that we can print covers on. There's probably new things that our printers can do that we just don't know about because we don't ask anymore. Maybe we should, the next time we sit down with our print rep, we should ask about what new materials, what new techniques, what new tricks they can do are, because we probably have more to learn as well. They're always changing things.
But you're saying it's a pretty transparent process. It's like they want you to understand it. It's not like they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and get away with something. It's not. I feel like sometimes car mechanics act that way, right? Where they don't really want you to know the details of how they're fixing your car. But in this case, they want you to know the details of how they're going to be printing your book. Yeah,
they're much more willing to educate you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Especially as automation has started to become what I'm finding, talking to not just Friesens, but other printers and other types of printing industries for boxes and things like that. As automation creeps in, there are a lot more price saving considerations at certain thresholds for numbers, right? Like a machine that is going to do everything, all the folding and all the say perforations or whatever, that it's going to do all that as part of its design, but you have to print an extra 2,000 copies. The overall cost per unit still might drop below a point that it's worthwhile to print more than less. But we're usually sitting around the 2,000 to 4,000 copy range as far as our pricing goes. So we've never reached a point where we're negotiating 20,000, 30,000 print runs, and then those different machines make a difference to us. But they can matter to other people in a very significant way. Okay, so before you can get a quote, you're saying you should have about 25% of the book done. Now, as far as I'm understanding the way you work, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate here, you're saying that because you're then budgeting how long it will take you to finish so that you can deliver it to the printer. Is that correct, Justin?
Yeah, like every project's a little different, and I think your pace is going to be a little different depending on like the content and the story. So it's really hard for me to, like, if I haven't started into a project and you ask me how long it's going to take, like that answer is going to be a guess. But once I've gotten 4 or 5 pages of said story finished, the answer I can give you is much more closer to what it's actually going to be.
So then this is a good place to insert that if you're frustrated with talking to a traditional publisher at how long it seems to take for a book to come out, remember that they aren't nimble enough to pivot the way we can to rearrange our entire schedules to show up to get the books because they came too early, right? They are operating on a much more meticulous scheduling. And so they do everything months and months in advance, and they try to have the books done finished maybe 6 months to a year in advance so that they can align their printing a year in advance. So, you know, you hand in a book to a traditional publisher and it takes 2 years for it to come out and you feel like, my gosh, how could it possibly take that long? It's because they are publishing sometimes 50, sometimes 500 titles also that year. And there's a much bigger logistical game to go on. So,
Yeah.
you know, consider that what we're talking about is you control the project, you're doing the work on the project, and you're doing the printing and controlling and pivoting and paying those bills yourself. It's a little bit different. So don't confuse, if you're a person who is starting out, don't confuse the speed in which we finish a book and get it printed with how it normally is in regular publishing, because it's very, very different. So then you have your book about 25% done. And actually that tracks because you were about 25, 30 pages in when we started doing all that quoting and looking at all that really seriously.
And that's about the time that I started really researching Kickstarter as the platform as well. Like we knew at that point that we wanted to do it as a Kickstarter. Well, that was really the only viable option at that point. Yeah. Because like otherwise, like, you know, 2,000 books arrive and I don't know what to do with them all. So Kickstarter was really the only way to go. So around that 25% finished, that's when I really started to just explore Kickstarter and find similar projects to what Dragon Nanny was going to be, like similar like feels of projects, and started collecting what ideas I thought were good about projects and just basically stealing ideas. I went through Kickstarter. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. I'm going to use that. Oh, I like what they did here. I'm going to do that. So it was from April until August, I was just spending, you know, half an hour to 2 hours a day on Kickstarter, researching other campaigns and picking out what I liked about them and reworking them into the Dragon Nanny project.
Alrighty then.
Like, it wasn't like the Kickstarter I just started building a couple weeks before it launched and launched it. It was something that I was chipping away at. And I think like it's probably went through 3 or 4 different versions before the version that actually went live. Like the first version that I showed you, Greg, was a drastically different look and feel than what
so completely different. Yeah, when I think of that. But you also approached it, and this is a good point to make for people who are thinking about just projects in general. You approached it like a book project almost, in that you did some thumbnails, you roughed out the basic ideas, you made notes about what you go where, then you compared it to pre-existing titles, then you borrowed some good ideas from them and then reworked it into what you were laying out. And then you took advice from people who had done it before, made some more changes, then took advice from a copy editor and a substantive editor who threw in, Sambiko took a look at it, and she had done some successful Kickstarters. So there was, you didn't just say like, oh, I for sure know how to do this.
Yeah, I should also, I should mention that I had a pretty good long conversation with Sam about it, and Sam Biko has done a couple successful Kickstarters in the past. So she had a lot of good advice. And then Brendan from the Starlight or Akarios board game project that I'd worked on, he's done quite a few Kickstarters as well. So he had all kinds of good pieces of advice as well. And one of my favorite ones that he gave me was there's a site that kind of works in tandem with Kickstarter called Bigger Cake. I hope that's what it's called. I'm going to check just in case I'm misquoting. Yeah, biggercake.com. you can go to biggercake.com and put in any Kickstarter campaign, and it gives you like a very detailed breakdown of where all the traffic from that campaign came from, where like was all the traffic on Kickstarter.com? Did all the traffic come from Facebook? Did all the traffic come from Instagram? Where are all these products going? Are they all in North America? Are they all going to Europe? Like, it shows you a lot of details about projects, and you can actually glean quite a bit of information seeing this back end. Yeah, so it was
including our own project, right? So you could put ours in there and then compare the stuff we're saying with what actually bore fruit. You know, this is, you know, we're in that information era where it's not just good at creating fake news, but actually real data. So it's pretty neat that way.
One of the neat things that I saw about this early on that I think kind of helped my mental health was almost every project that I put in there had huge spikes at the beginning of the project, and around the middle, like, doesn't flatline, but it definitely, like, everything goes down in the middle and then comes back up at the end. And so that the middle of the project, it's I think it'd be really easy to get sad about how things are going. Yeah, a little discouraged. But it was good to know that everybody kind of goes through that, and that you just need to keep pushing, and there's going to be a big surge at the end.
Yeah, right. As long as you stay consistent. So one of the things that I'll point out too is that when we had decided to do the Kickstarter, we're moving backwards a few steps. We had an idea for a couple of books, right, that we wanted to do. And here was one that we had made a decision to do before COVID had forced a shutdown and had forced a change in the plans of how we would distribute it. So one of the important steps before checking your quotes and setting your print dates and your print numbers and all that kind of stuff is have a clear vision of what the project is and why. And then when problems arise, ask yourself, how do I continue given these problems? Right. And that's one of the things that we sat down and did and said, do we wait an extra year before we finish? And can we afford to wait an extra year? Because there's also a side of it where you have to build momentum with your, with your customers, with the consumers of that product, and they will forget about you, right? And as online purchasing increases, and as people are stopping to go to regular shows, and as shows themselves, maybe, and in this case, what I mean by shows is like Comic-Cons and public events. We don't know when that's going to be. Can we afford to wait only to find out that there isn't going to be more for a number of years? Well, no. So what are the things we have to pivot, which comes back around to a very specific question I think is worth a minutia look. We keep saying the word 2,000 copies, and then they actually sent us 2,086, as you clarified. Why did we come upon that number? I mean, I know these answers, but for the sake of the listener, I'm going to ask you, Justin. Why did we set the print run at 2,000? Why did almost 2,100 books come instead? And is that normal? And what are the considerations there?
So that number is just based on just kind of sales history of. That number has just come from experience. I know that. This is not the only book I'm going to make. I'm going to be making, if this was the only book I was ever going to make, that number would probably be 500 or 1,000. It's 2,000 because once things slow down, sales slow down on Dragon Nanny, I'm going to have another book come out, and then things are going to surge again for not only Dragon Nanny, but all my past books. And that's going to happen again and again and again. So that 2,000 books is kind of, that's looking at like 5 to 6 years of selling books. That
like based on your experience for the last 5 or 6 years of selling books, you mean?
Yeah. And looking forward 5 years as well, like using that same model. This is enough product to sell now and to sustain me when other books come out, because I need that catalog of my past publications to go along with my new books. And that was something we learned with this, which I wish I had kind of pushed a bit more, was how well all my past books sold on the Dragon Nanny Kickstarter. I wish I'd had more of my titles tied into the Kickstarter project.
Yeah, so I'm just going to summarize that a little bit for the dear listener. That because Justin and I have made a lot of graphic novels, both through traditional publishing and through self-publishing, we know that there's a old adage that is always works, and that is nothing sells your first book like your next book. And so we set a print run of 2,000 copies on Dragon Nanny after we had gotten close to 500 pre-orders through Kickstarter. Rather than just print 600 books, we looked at what will a year of selling online do for us? How many books would we need for that? And how many books will we need the next time we come out with a book and we see a sales spike? We want to have that product. You want to print it ahead of time because your cost per unit is lower than reprinting. And also printing a book is a logistical nightmare. So the more stock you have sometimes can be the better. And when we're doing in-person shows, having extra stock that you can take with you is of huge benefit when you sort of make a salad bar of your past titles when you're in person. So it was a bunch of these different considerations. Would it be fair to say, Justin, that about 25% of that print run was pre-sales? About another 25% of that print run we're sort of hoping to have sold through online events for the rest of the year, and that the rest of that print run we're kind of putting away as a nest egg for when the world reopens?
Not when the world reopens, but like for the next Kickstarter of the next book, and yeah, like when events become a thing again. I'm looking, the next big chunk of it, I think, is going to be in 2021. I plan on doing another Kickstarter. And I think copies of Dragon Nanny are going to be a big part of the sales of whatever that Kickstarter is. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We were having that conversation. We were standing in front of the bookshelf today, masks on, just for the dear listener that thinks we just gave up on social distancing. We had no choice but to work together to unload the truck, but we were pretty separate otherwise.
Thank you for all your cooperation. By the way, do you have a mint? Perhaps some Banaka?
You've set your print date. You have sent your files to the printer. They will send you before the whole machine starts running versions of your book, a print test on paper that's comparable to the paper you'll be printed on, which is unbound, and then a reading test, a proof of the book in the proper page layouts that is stapled together so that you can flip it like it's supposed to be flipped to read it. But that's pretty low res copy, easy to read, hard to tell whether it's being printed well. And then a number of versions of your graphic novel printed on full color paper that is not bound, where the trim is left on, and you start looking through that. So that's where, for us, we came up with a few things that we wanted to change.
Yeah. It's
happen.
Always so different seeing it printed. Like you stare at it on a screen all day, but as soon as it's printed on a page, it's suddenly in a completely different beast.
Yeah, and having kids read it, you know, it was really telling for me to have. We got those proofs in, and my kids were in the studio with me, and they went through it a page at a time, and my eldest read it out loud to my youngest, and even we made a few changes based on hearing it read out loud by someone who didn't write it, right? Which is a really big step. And feeling how a kid is exploring that same story.
I was so happy when they discovered the hot pepper thing on their own without any kind of prompting from either of us. I was really glad that element of the story landed, and that'll make sense to everybody when you read the book or buy it at chasingartwork.com.
Now
and
we're all
read
gonna
the
be
book.
looking for the pepper
What's-
thing.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about the pepper thing is until that moment, I was unconvinced that it would work. It was my one part of the story where I was like, okay, Justin put this thing in here and like he really loves this. And I don't really love it. And I don't know if it's going to connect with the readers the way he thinks it will, but I actually don't know. And so sometimes you just got to you got to trust your collaborator's gut and just go with what they see. And you were so adamant that it'll work. So I was like, okay, let's let it work. And then when it worked, and it was my own kids that proved it, it was like a double duty of like, well, he's right. And not only is he right, but my own kids are smarter than I am. Right. So there was like 2 steps in there, which is nice. So we adjusted the ending of the story a bunch. And I think it's really important to point out that we had decided to make the book based on a draft that we had, a story beat that we had. And once we started, deciding that the ending was wrong, to us was not a signal that we should stop making the book.
Oh,
And
no,
I
not
wanna-
at all. That's
Right. So I want to ask you a little bit, because I think that's a normal step for a lot of people, is to start work on something. They get some flow. They think they know where it's going. And then when they find out, no, that's not where it should go, I think that pulls a lot of the momentum out of the project entirely.
I think a lot of people are under the illusion that it all needs to be 100% cemented in at that thumbnail stage, and they shouldn't be changing things past that.
Right. Now,
And
is that
I
just
think that's,
because we're spoiled in that we've made enough books our own way that we'll just do that and not freak out? If you do that with a traditional publisher, they'll freak out. Like I've been there in that meeting. I want to change these last 5 pages, and it is a enormous concern to the editors and publishers.
Yeah, I think when there's more cooks in the kitchen, that's probably why it usually works that way, right? Like they have a team that comes up with the story and decides how it's going to go, and then that team is off the project and the artists start working. And if the artists want to make changes, well, now suddenly we need to get all those other writers and people back to be part of this again. And they don't want to do that. That's like backtracking. That's doing work that's already done, you know?
Right.
But
yeah.
Whereas we're doing it all. We have this ability to like pivot when it feels right.
How come you didn't get, I think it's an important step because we're moving backwards a step. How come you don't get overwhelmed with all the steps that are to come when you know that you're going to publish it yourself? Why didn't you just freak out?
I did I think, yeah, the part of it was kind of tempered by doing a book for somebody else and seeing somebody else go through it and not being completely in charge, like being only like a part of the pipeline and seeing it from that perspective. So by the time I was doing it all by myself, it was I was a little more sure of what I was doing because I'd seen it done. And then once I proved that I could do it myself, it became so much easier every time after. It just became easier and easier. So I think it was really nice to be able to not be 100% in control for those first couple books and learn that mental strategy of not getting too worked up about the unknowns and everything.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I think about sometimes when I am planning a larger project, or like how I manage the stress of those things, is I make a list, and this is maybe a good practical thing for somebody following along, is make a list of people who you can call who will have the answer if you can't figure it out. And figure out, do you know enough people who you can ask for not advice, but people who actually have experience in that field that you can call. And that can be a huge balm on a troubled spirit. is to just be like, okay, I know that if the wheels fall off, here's these 4 people that I will call that can help, right? And if you know who they are, it helps you take some risks. It helps you say, okay, I'm going to figure this out myself, because even if I can't, I do have a final person to call, right? They made a whole game show about that. And you have that lifeline, right? So if you figure out who those people are, that can really help. And in my case, we're on each other's lists for different steps of those processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I have a pre-flight question related to InDesign, I know I can ask you. And if there's a logistical or financial math figure in that we got to do, you'll sometimes run that past me, right? And we know that we're on each other's team, so that makes part of that easier.
Mm-hmm.
And then having some reliable print reps along the way, and even competing print reps, people who want the business that we're giving to Friesens are quick to answer questions well when I call them for that advice, when I tell them what we've done in the past. So that can be part of it too. So let's move back a step. We're not making the book yet. We're just deciding on a story. What was the back and forth like for let's make this book?
So should we get into, like, that's a little more like cerebral, like creative process. Do we want to talk about that, or do we want to talk about more nitty gritty technical, like Kickstarter stuff? Like, how did we decide the tiers? How did we decide the price points? How did we decide like what rewards, and shipping and stuff like that?
Oh, you know what? I think there's at least one person who listens to this podcast who's like, yes, that's what I want. Yes. Because I got a message from them saying that's exactly what I want. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Justin. Why don't you break down where those ideas came from?
So that was a tough one that I think we were kind of like going back and forth, like the rewards. Let's talk about the pledges. So when you launch a Kickstarter, you're basically launching a store. You're saying, here's this product that I want to make, and if you buy it on this store, it'll be delivered in a couple months to a year later. And then so that's the main item in your store, and then you have to decide what are these other items that you can put in your store that'll bolster up that one main item. So Dragon Nanny was the main item that we were launching the store with, and we had to decide what other books in our catalog and what other artwork that I had done and what other services we can offer to make it more enticing, to get more people involved.
Yeah, and it'd be fair to say that what you're thinking of there is an incentive that underlines the urgency. This is the product that will be available forever, Dragon Nanny. You can buy it now on the website, even if you missed the Kickstarter. But if you support it early, these are the things that we're going to give you as a way of saying thank you, that are cost effective for us and added value for the consumer. And
allows the consumer to be a part of the process as well, as you guys did with like the naming of the dragons and stuff like that. Like that was really cool.
Yeah. So that's a pretty common one that, and again, this all came from me just going to other Kickstarters and stealing cool ideas from other people. And a very common one is, if you support the Kickstarter, we'll put your name somewhere in the book.
Where did it happen that we said, let's name dragons instead? Because we had so many dragons in the book. Is that why?
I forget the origin of that tier in particular, but I didn't like the idea of just a page with just a huge list of names. I didn't think that was very fun.
It doesn't feel special to the person either. Just being one of many, many names.
Yeah. I just want to jump in here and say, for the first Fan Quest, when we got our successful Kickstarter, we printed a poster with everybody's name on it and put it up at the event. So
I remember that poster. Actually, I remember that poster.
But we didn't have dragons to name either, so we didn't have that option.
Well, and what's interesting to me about that is, okay, so here's one of the things I really love about art in general. So this is me getting a little bit esoteric. When you consider that a work of art is finished by the person that sees it, then we had this ability at the moment of Kickstarter to say, here's our idea. It's not finished yet. Do you want to be part of this idea? And people who said yes, they're like, okay, we're going to adopt these dragons. Once we decided we're going to let people adopt dragons, and people really wanted to, then we increased the number of dragons that were available to be adopted, which increased the number of dragons that actually appear in the book. So really, the final form of the story is legitimately influenced by the enthusiasm of people who supported the project, which is, that's so wonderful. There's no time in history when this is a thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important to to be excited about that. Like, people's enthusiasm changed the form without changing the final product. Like, the story didn't change, but some of how it got to them changed completely by that. Mm-hmm. That's just an aside, but something that I'm kind of tickled by on the book.
That's especially true. Big pages, like big spreads of the book, had to be completely reworked because I thought in my mind, oh, for sure, I'm building at least 40 dragons that are going to show up throughout the book. And then when I finished, that number was more like 19, and I had to figure out how am I going to fit 21 more baby dragons in this story. And so some things had to be reworked. And this was like in August that I was starting to freak out about that.
I just can't do it, Captain. I don't have the power.
A fun aside here is that at a certain point, Justin's like, okay, I'm going to the farm where no one can reach me so that I can work round the clock if I feel like it on just figuring out how these dragons are going to fit in here. I don't want to be bothered, and I don't want anyone to harass me. So I'm leaving all the places where people can find me, and I'm going to go live in this barn and work on these dragons.
It's a very nice barn.
It is.
It's important to note that it's like full kitchen, bar, bathroom, 4-bedroom. The loft has been converted into basically a huge living room.
I wanted them to imagine you squatting in the shell of an old rusty tractor. That's what I wanted them to. Not this posh post pig barn that you guys have.
Tell them what happened 24 hours before the book was to go to print. What did you message me at? It was past midnight. It was about 1:00 in the morning. The next day, the book was pretty much due. What happened?
So related to this dragon, my kids see these pages in the proof, and they're big-hearted kids, and they are not saying what I know is on their mind, which is, how come I didn't get to name a dragon in your book, Dad? And I can see it because they keep dwelling on those pages and looking at them and like picking their favorites and like looking at me longingly. And I'm like, oh no, I have failed as a father here. Like, here, who else could have put this in here except for me? So I texted Justin, 24 hours before the book is going to press, can you fit 2 more in? And can we see them first so the kids can name them? And I even framed it as this is a favor. This is me asking you as a father. I put a little guilt. I sprinkled a little guilt on it. So yeah, he pulled it off though. I have to say. Justin,
so now there's 42 dragons in it?
There's some extra one.
That's excellent. That's a great number. 42 is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. So
I agree.
It works.
Yes.
The first thing I did when you requested that was take your name off the cover, and then I reluctantly put it back on later on.
You were very gracious about it. There was like a slight delay when you said, something like, I'd love to look back at it, because it was pretty polite in a way that normally you're not that polite to me when you're talking to me. So it was like the equivalent of speaking through gritted teeth, like that. Yes, I'm sure that'll work. Great. Thanks. Okay. Talk to you soon. So yeah.
I did it for the boys. I didn't do it for you.
And they will appreciate that for all time, I'm sure. So Kickstarter tiers, does that wrap it up? You stole from everyone?
I stole from everybody, and I think we ended up having around 20 tiers, but we played around with the idea for about 45 tiers, and just kind of
whittled it down.
Yeah, just kind of built them all up, and then just kind of whittled down what was the easiest. We really thought about stuff like if we include this tier, the shipping on that is going to be triple what just the book alone was going to be. Like the book alone is going to be X amount to ship, but if we add this as a reward, then like the shipping on that is going to be very, very expensive. So maybe let's not do that.
Yeah, the answer to 80 of 100 of my ideas that you had was that will change shipping too much. It wasn't that it was a bad idea. It was that that'll change shipping too much, which will cost the consumer too much money. So it's not a good choice.
And like, I think we should, like, we didn't do there was a lot of things we should have done a little differently. And we've learned a lot from this first one that we're going to be doing differently for the next one. So it was like a very big learning process. And I'm sure like everybody, you got to try a lot of different things. Like, I think a variety was really good. Like some things really surprised us. Like we didn't expect the adopted dragon to be sold out in the first 2 days, but that was by far the quickest tier to disappear. And I didn't think it was gonna like get gobbled up that quickly.
Yeah, not at all. I thought that would be like at the end, people who are like coming in to find like, yeah, okay, fine. I'm your third cousin once removed. And I got this link to your Kickstarter and sure, I'll support it. Okay, might as well name this dragon after me. Right. That's what I thought those would be for.
I could have told you that. I always go for that option whenever there's an option to add your name or to add some part of yourself. I'm so self-involved that I want to see my own things in the things I read. I went to, you guys are familiar with the Surplus of Popes guys, right? The game.
Yes. Yeah.
And they did it was in Kickstarter, it was GoFundMe, I believe, for their game for Surplus of Popes. And again, I chose the option in which I got to be on a card. One of those cards is me as well. It's my podcast. It's specifically, it's more like the Media Nerds podcast, but I asked them to do it and they did it. So I thought, hey, that's a great option. So I always pick that.
A little piece of history. Now we've been kind of tongue in cheek by saying steal the ideas from the other Kickstarters. Recognize that when I say steal, what I mean is like you steal things that you see have inherent value, right? So you see something of value, you want it for your own project. What are some of the things that you saw were working so well for other people that you thought, oh, we should try that, right? What are those things worth stealing when you're looking at other people's Kickstarter breakdowns?
The commission was definitely something I hadn't considered on my own, but I saw enough other artists do it that it gave me the idea to include that. So in Dragon Nanny, I had 4 slots available for any custom painting that they requested. I think actually only 3. So that was something that I didn't come up with on my own. I just saw a lot of other artists doing it, and it seemed like a pretty good idea. And I've started all 3 commissions. They're all pretty fun projects too. So it all turned out well. I was really dreading like maybe one of these is going to turn into a nightmare client, but they've all been fantastic. So that was definitely one that I didn't come up with on my own. The Adopt a Dragon thing, I think, is probably just a play on, we saw so many successful Kickstarters have some kind of, you get to leave your mark on this project. That was just me or us. I don't know where the idea came from originally, but just translating it to the Dragon Nanny project. Like every idea that seemed like a good idea just has to go through the filter of this unique project, and it kind of makes it unique after you do that, right? You're not just copying and pasting.
So case by case that it's hard to say like, here's a general set of rules you should look at for fulfilling Kickstarters, and more of, there are some hard and fast ones though that came up often, which is shipping is always going to be a bottleneck in cost and time. And you want to make decisions that will allow you to put things in the same package that you identify, so that it doesn't change the weight or the dimensions too strongly of what you're doing. Otherwise, you have to send multiple packages to the same address, which is, increases a lot of the cost per unit overall. And then again, this comes back around to our back catalog surprise, which was, we were surprised so many people were wanting multiple copies of our back catalog included in their Kickstarter order, because we believed that these would be people who already had those books who'd be supporting Dragon Nanny for the next book in that series. And it turned out a very large number of people who supported Dragon Nanny had just never heard of us and wanted.
We had to increase that tier not once or twice, but I think 3 times we upped the amount of back catalog books available. We kept upping that number because the demand was just so high.
Yeah. And that was a shock to us. We thought that maybe making those somehow seem more elusive or like limited edition or whatever would be the way to drive them, but that wasn't it at all. People just were like, oh, this is an easy way for me to order all of your books all at once. Great, click. And that was a surprise to us because that's a significant investment for people for books they have not read or do not know. So that shocked us. That's a worth exploring further idea for sure.
I have a package for you.
Sounds broken.
Most likely, sir. I'll bet it was something nice, though.
We played around with pins for a while. We wanted to do enamel pins, but that changed the shipping. We talked about stickers at one point, but sticker manufacturing was something I didn't have much experience with. I didn't have any companies lined up, so it seemed like too much extra work. Artwork prints are like my bread and butter. Like that's what I'm good at. I know the printing. I know how to get them made properly and well. So I did a lot of that. Foil prints, that was something that I'd recently started doing a lot of, and so I had experience there. So that was an easy one to include. So it was just kind of like, what do I know how to do well, and what can add, like, is a lot of added value to just the book itself. So we tried to stay away from any new territory. Like every once in a while, you'll see a Kickstarter that just has way too many things going on in their rewards. Like they have T-shirts, they have pins, they have books, they have like posts. Like they just went like a little too nuts. And I think that's where some of those horror stories come from, where the shipping just became so expensive that they ended up losing money on the project rather than making a profit. So we tried to keep all that in mind.
Okay, so this is a bit of a minutia detail. You did a lot of research and did a lot of tests related to the packaging that we'd be shipping things out in. Do you want to speak to like some of those trials and failures, and maybe our sink water test?
Yeah. So Greg and I were talking about this today. The nightmare that is the Kickstarter is usually the shipping everything out part. But I feel so much more confident in that part of the project because earlier this year, I opened up my store to sell limited edition foils and ended up getting quite a few more orders than I was expecting, and had to do like large quantity orders in a short amount of time. So that meant packaging everything up safely, getting shipping materials together, and printing off dozens and dozens of shipping labels and getting them sent in the post in a timely manner. And I hadn't really done anything like to that scale before. So it was a huge learning experience, but I made it through the first time, and then it was a lot easier the second time. So when it came time to get all the shipping stuff for Dragon Nanny, I had learned so many lessons with the store. So the first thing I did was order a bunch of samples of envelopes and boxes and containers that we'd be shipping the books in. And I think actually our first choice was there was a corrugated box available that was almost the exact size of Dragon Nanny's printing. And we're like, oh, this is it. We're gonna like order 500 of these, and that'll be like done deal. And so I had a sample sent.
I thought that was the perfect. I was just like, wow, this can't get better than this.
Can't get better than that. So the sample came to the studio, and this comes back to the whole like ask companies for samples. They're usually more than okay to send you samples of things. If you're going to be ordering a bunch of them, it makes sense that you need to test one out before you place an order for 2 to 500 or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
this
Or 1,000
box
in our
came
case.
in. Yeah. The box came in and we put a rust and water in it, which it's a smaller book than Dragon Nanny, but the same dimensions, but not as many pages. But as soon as we put it in, we realized as soon as this box drops on the corner, it is completely flush with the book's corner. So the book is going to get damaged if this thing drops at all. Like there's not enough protection on the corners, and that's where the damage is going to happen. So it didn't seem like a
And word
sturdy
to the
enough
wise,
option.
if you ship a book, it's going to get dropped on the corners.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Just know that that's true. So you better make your packaging, take that into consideration.
The other thing that's happened with of all my foil orders, there's probably been about like a 3 to 5% something happened rate, right? That's just kind of general. Like if you're mailing things around the world, 3 to 5% of the time, you're going to have an issue, whether it gets bent up, or in my case, water damage seemed to be the most common issue. The first round of packages that I sent out were just, I tried to go plastic free. I was trying to be environmentally friendly. So I didn't have any plastic involved with my packaging. And a couple in the States arrived completely soaked. They looked like they'd been sitting in puddles or like they came out like down the river to get to these people. And they were just completely warped beyond recognition. So with DragonNet, with this packaging,
is that not the shipper's fault though? Like in what world would you expect that to happen?
Exactly.
Well,
I
in this
thought,
world, this is the world that it happens. We took a bunch of books since then and packaged them in our different packaging and put them in the sink just to see what would happen.
So actually water damage is what we're most afraid of. And I bought these really bright fluorescent stickers for my prints that say do not bend, and then another one that's fragile, handle with care. So I have these screaming loud stickers on every package that goes out the door that basically says please be careful. But yeah, water seemed to be the biggest issue. So when we got this new envelope for Dragon Nanny, we got something that was bigger than the book itself. And then the Dragon Nanny book gets wrapped in, it gets wrapped in posters of my artwork that came from an old print run of large posters. And when I went to do my press check of the large posters, as they were warming the machine up, they have this huge stack of posters that are going to get thrown out because the plates aren't quite lined up yet. And I just asked, can I take those?
That aforementioned waste. Yeah.
So those are just pulp to them. They don't really care about these posters. They're not supposed to be used. But because the press guy was nice and liked us, or liked me rather, I don't think Greg was around at that point. He let me walk away with, I think, like 50 pounds of posters that were misaligned. They were printed on both sides. So that's what I'm using as wrapping paper. So every single Dragon Nanny gets wrapped in an old poster proof that wasn't supposed to be taken from the printing press, and then gets put in this larger than the book package. So even if it's dropped on the corner, there's about 1.5 inches of like distance between the actual edge and the book itself. So it has some movement, and then it's wrapped up in this thick paper. So that also cushions it as well. And then we did the sink test, and it can survive a good amount of rain. So as long as it's not completely submerged, we're pretty sure water won't be the issue.
I had fun. We had fun role playing that moment. We're like, okay, I'm a careless UPS guy. Drop. Oh no, it's raining. Oh no,
it's like Jim Carrey at the beginning of Ace Ventura. Remember that sequence?
Yes, exactly.
We should wrap it up, guys. We've been going longer than an hour. But here's what I propose, because we took the process as far back as the production and kind of, we didn't cover the conception of the book and how you guys came up with the story, but I think we should save that for another episode once we've all had a chance to read it. So give us the people who like ordered the book a chance to receive and read it, and then we'll talk about the ins and outs of the story and how you guys decided to do this or do that. So that's what I think we should do in a maybe a month or so after everybody's got their books.
since we said it more than once that it's important to listen to your collaborators when they have an idea, I think that this is an excellent idea, Dan.
Okay.
And I look forward to revisiting it just as you suggest. So then this has been Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made and in particular how Kickstarters get fulfilled this episode. This is Gregory Kamichuk encouraging you to join the fight and make comics.